And welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 283. Today, daffodils and feedback. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about, ideas of what you can do and trying to get past this notion that photography is just a technical exercise. So really want to kind of deep dive into that a little bit. And then we also have feedback. A couple of people have sent in images, which we're going to talk about as well. So if you happen to be watching live, then leave a comment. Let me know you're here. Tell me what the weather's doing, all that usual kind of stuff. And we can make a start. Yeah, so welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 283. So today it's a feedback session, but I'm also wanting to do a little section on the notion of photography as something more than just shutter speed, exposure time, getting it in focus. And well, I'm sure most of you know already that it's more than that because, well, anybody who's been watching this for any length of time knows that I've been talking about this for years, literally years. But at the same time, I keep seeing around me this notion of a kind of limited sense of what photography is. So I want to be addressing that with just a simple little exercise I did walking around my local neighbourhood with my phone. And so I'm going to be coming on to that. So meanwhile, like I say, if you happen to be watching live now, then leave a comment. Let me know you're here. Join in the chat. The feedback's always good. If you're not watching live, you can still leave a little comment down below. It's just I won't be able to get it in real time. Yes, so... yeah, that was the other thing I was going to say. Yes, leave a like as well. If you happen to be watching this live now, then leaving a like is always quite good. It kind of helps the algorithms. YouTube occasionally shows it to other people in their feed. And so somebody goes, oh, look, there's something live going on. Let's go and see what that is. So we occasionally pick up the odd new extra viewer that way. And if you've watched this and you're watching the recording and you quite like it too, then click the like as well, because then YouTube might show it to other people as well. Hey, we're all subject and slaves to the algorithm. But if you can help me out here a bit, that's always appreciated. So I see we've got a couple of comments in already. So April says, greetings from a grey day in Long Island, New York. Happy time will be the same next week. Happy that time will be the same time next week in the US. I can't stay long till then. Yes, because at the moment we, over in the US and Canada, I think your clocks of, is it forward, spring forward, fall back? Was it fall forward and spring back? Whichever way around, clocks have changed there. Here they change in the UK next week. So yes, quick little reminder for anybody that if you are tuning in next week, UK and I think Europe as a whole actually moves forward an hour. So yeah, make sure, just double check your local time compared to here. It's always 3 p.m. UK time on a Sunday, but UK time obviously it varies depending on where you are in the world. Lisa says, hello all from a sunny spring day in southern Maryland. Susan joins us from a sunny Kakubri. At last, we've had grey mist and fog for the last few days, but the sun finally came out. It's spring. Well, we've had the fog here in Castle Douglas and the mist in the morning, but then it's cleared. Has it been sort of stuck with you a bit longer then, Susan, perhaps? Gunilla joins us from Orland and says, sunny here. Marcy says, oops, sorry, forgot this was not the geopolitics channel. Many apologies. Did you leave a comment about geopolitics? That's fine. You can be here anyway. John Harvey says, hello all from mid-Ohio. Nice day around these parts. Anton joins us from a sunny spring day in Sweden. Marcy says the snow is smelting. Is melting here in Winnipeg. Yes, and it is spring forward, not fall forward. VG says, good evening, friends. Summer started getting hotter by the day. That's in Chennai in India. Janet says, hi from a damp, rainy Mississauga. Nadia joins us from a sunny Fife. Janet also says, spring forward, fall back. And Marilyn joins us from Colorado, where the daffodils are blooming. Excellent. Right, okay. So, all good stuff. No. I didn't mean to do that one at all. What did I mean to do? I think I meant to do that one. Yes. There we go. Clear the screen a little bit. So today then, so we have, what are we talking about? So primarily it was going to be a feedback session, and we do have both Anton and Gunilla have both sent in images, and I will be giving feedback on those. But there's another issue that's been plaguing me, I think, for the last several weeks. And this is really what I wanted to talk about. There is this, I don't know, I'm not sure where to begin really with this. There's part of it is I've judged a handful of camera club competitions recently. I mean, Susan knows I was doing one with hers as well. Less of a problem with Stewardship Camera Club, it has to be said, but there are one or two other places. Also, I was asked if I would judge another one that's online full of expats somewhere else in the world. And when I looked at the competitions they were doing, something just kind of coalesced and made me realise that I think so many people, too many people, think that photography is a case of just lining up the camera, getting it in focus, getting the right exposure, and going click. And that's really all photography is. And that if you understand the technicals, so you understand what shutter speed you ought to have, what depth of field you ought to have to get the right exposure, and that you can make sure something is in focus. And then maybe the truly advanced person has learnt that there is rule of thirds, which means quite often if your subject is slightly off center, then that tends to make a slightly more pleasing picture. But in essence, that's kind of it for photography. And then some people can maybe go even a little bit further. They've heard me talk about the use of diagonals, or maybe they've heard about leading lines, or maybe they've even heard about things like echoes or bracketing, or, certain kind of repeating patterns, or notions of symmetry and asymmetry. And all these things start to build up a bigger picture. And you start thinking, well, okay, if I know that, then I'm going to understand how to take a technically good picture. And camera clubs in particular tend to judge very much on technical expertise. But to me, the problem with this is it's rather like judging a story based on its grammar. Okay, fine. It's useful if you know that there's a capital letter at the beginning of a sentence or on a proper noun. It's useful to know when to put a full stop. Pretty much once you've got that, you can write a story. Now, it's also useful to know maybe when to use a comma. And for those who are maybe more advanced, knowing how to use brackets, maybe even knowing the difference between a colon and a semicolon. But knowing the difference between when to use a colon and a semicolon doesn't make you a better storyteller. It may be. Now, these grammatical terms are useful in the sense that if you are trying to communicate an idea, a thought, a meaning, then knowing how to use the grammar helps you to do that. Knowing where to put a comma, knowing when a semicolon might work better, enables you to communicate that little bit better. But in and of itself, just knowing the rules of grammar doesn't make you a good storyteller. And this is really what this is the whole thing about photography, that understanding your camera settings, understanding even basic rules of composition and light, don't make you a better storyteller. They are useful because it means when you want to tell a story, when you want to communicate an idea, then understanding that actually this idea will be communicated better if I use a shallow depth of focus. This idea will be communicated better if I use a slow shutter speed. This idea will be communicated better if I use backlighting. So you can see that all these different technical aspects are useful tools to communicate, but they are not the end in themselves. And again and again and again, I keep seeing this whole world of photography, which seems to be built around the idea that it's the tools. That if you somehow understand your camera settings and you can take a photo of something and it's in focus and it's exposed correctly, then that's all that's required. And it's horrified me. To be honest, this last few weeks, I've been having something almost of an existential crisis when it comes to photography, to realise just how widespread that is. I thought, okay, yes, of course, some people are going to think that. But my job here is to try and educate you beyond that, to show that no, storytelling is a creative medium, and how much fun can we have creating with it? So this is really the place that I got to, that I thought, okay, I want to explore this a little bit, and I'm going to give a little example. And this is, for those of you who've seen just the cover card that I put up this morning for this podcast, I'm using the notion of daffodils. Sorry, just a couple of, we got another comment here. Oh, right, yeah, Anton has said, I get this impression on photography subreddits too. Very technical and very little love for what a photo is saying. Yeah, it's precisely that. It's this notion of, oh, well, but the thing is, we can judge it. We can say, oh, those highlights have been blown. Oh, that rule of that subject isn't exactly on the rule of thirds. So what? The question is, does it communicate? Now, like I say, all these technical bits are there to help you communicate. So what I want to show as an example then, so let me just do a little bit of tidying up my desktop here so that I can see what's going on. And what I'm going to talk about now is the notion of what I did was I took a little stroll yesterday precisely for this. While I've got a little walk I do round the neighbourhood. Oh, Robert's joined us, says howdy all from a sunny, mild North Texas. Welcome, Robert. So what I decided to do, I wanted to do was, I went for my little walk around the neighbourhood. I've got, half-hour walk I do every single day, just walking about, and I took my phone. As I always, it's sitting in my pocket, and as I continually say, the great thing about these things is you've got them on you. Okay. Now the thing is about your phone, the camera on your phone, is it takes care of the technicals for you. By and large, it auto exposes, it auto focuses. As long as you hold it roughly in the right direction, it's sorted out the technicals. So if photography was only about the technicals, then hey, you've got this. You don't need anything else. It's a bit like thinking food and sustenance is only about calories. Well, if that's the case, you could just live off eating teaspoons of sugar. Eat 2,000 calories worth of sugar each day and you'll be fine. Well, obviously you wouldn't. Food and sustenance is much more than just calories, and photography is much more than just the technicals. So, just because at the moment daffodils happen to be out, it's spring here in the UK, I thought, well, okay, while I'm doing it, let's just go around and take some photos of daffodils. So let's start here. So I saw in just a little bit of greenish little bit, what's not big enough to call a park, couple of trees and a bit of green. There's a daffodil. A lone daffodil was sort of sticking out the ground. So I wandered over to it. I put my camera more or less, sort of slight angle, slightly above it, and I shot straight down. And here we have a picture of a daffodil. Okay, and it's focused on the petals that are lower down and on the stamen in the middle. It's not focused on the top parts of the petal. Well, I could have focused on top parts of the trumpet part if I'd wanted, and that would have created a slightly different shot. So this is close in to the point whereby I'm cutting the tips off the petals. And that's fine because we kind of get this close-up sense. But what I could just as easily have done is decided to pull out a bit. So if where are we? There we go. So same thing, same angle, but now I've just pulled back. And now what we have is daffodil in a slightly larger context. Okay, so now we've got the green moss behind, but we can see the stem coming down and we can see a leaf shooting off in the side. Okay, quick comment here. April says, Kim, you should do workshops about this issue. I agree. I do podcasts on it, April, every single week. These are the workshops and you get them for free. Susan says, doing some scrolling through Guru Shots the other day and became increasingly frustrated at how many photographers don't follow the brief, especially in street photography, no narrative at all. Yeah, I follow the brief, absolutely. That's okay, so we can start off with a daffodil. Close up, we can give it the full shape of the daffodil. Or maybe what we do is we just kind of come down at a bit of an angle. Now, I will say all these photos here are unedited, right? I've not even begun to play around with edits. So some of the, if I was going to edit this, I would balance it up a little bit more. But that's not really the point. The point that I'm trying to make here is on a walk, even with my phone, even unedited, right? I take a shot. So straightforwardly from the daffodil, I can be above it, close up. I can be above it, stood back a bit. I can come down a little bit, and now we've got more of the shape of the trumpet, which you couldn't see before. And then also, what we also notice here is there's a little spider on it as well, which actually you didn't notice with the naked eye. You only really notice once you look in the phone, or you zoom in on it. Or maybe we could turn around a little bit more. So now what the trumpet is doing is the trumpet's actually elongating out of the daffodil. So, you know, we've gone from that kind of 45 degree, well, not even 40, you know, just slightly off. We're moving round, okay? Then maybe what we can do is we can go right round. We can go, 90 degrees onto it, a 45-degree angle, but we can go side on to it. Again, just a little hint of spider there. Now, the other thing about this phone is this is not a massively complicated super phone. This is a Google Pixel 7, right? So I've just, and I've got two lenses on it. I've got the ordinary lens, which gives me a 2x zoom, and I've got a slightly wide angle lens to 0.7. Okay, so I don't have a macro lens on it. I don't have a super zoom lens on it. So yeah, Marcy says that spider would have been my subject. So yes, if you've got a macro lens, or maybe we go back with that old little jeweler's loop idea, and you put that over the lens of your camera, suddenly you've got a super macro lens. So yes, another option here is you could be photographing the spider on the daffodil. Or what you maybe want to do is turn around and then show a little bit of space for it. So it's not just the daffodil now, it's the daffodil on this little bit of grass with these trees and a bit of a house in the background. These trees, you can see, don't have any leaves on them, so still giving you a sort of sense of that kind of early spring. The sun might be out, there might be a bit of warmth in the air, a little bit of by comparison to how it has been, but it's still not, it's not full summer yet. Or you might decide, having seen that, actually, you know what, I want to get that daffodil so it's got the sky behind it. And I do the sky behind it, and I've also moved backwards and forwards so that it's framed slightly between these two tree trunks as well. Okay, so, or what I might decide to do is go from the other side, and instead of having those trees behind it, actually have this wooden fence behind it. So what we have then is we've got an isolated daffodil now with a different, it's the same daffodil, I've just moved around slightly. Or maybe a little bit further on the walk, we want to have that sense of a daffodil as a domestic plant sitting in the driveway of just a house on the street. So there's a house here with these little bits, there's bits of heather, other little, a couple of flowers, hyacinths or something coming up there, bit of gravel, and what we've got here is little, just a bunch there. So again, what is it about the daffodils? Is it the daffodil itself? Is it the daffodil in some kind of context? What context are we creating for that daffodil? And the daffodil that's there sitting with a door behind it is different to a daffodil that's sitting on a bit of mossy rise with a wooden fence behind it. Or maybe we go around to another house a bit longer on the street, and what there is a line of daffodils sitting up against the wall. Okay, so now what we're looking at is the spread, that splash of yellow. Not just a single bit of yellow or a little pocket of yellow, but a splash, a line of yellow. Or maybe what we want to do is we want to have that little line of yellow in the context of the house itself. So now you really get that sense of here's an urban bungalow with its bird bath and its little plastic mushrooms, and that I think actually these ones, judging by the wire there and the little sensor there, might even light up in the dark. Okay, so but that notion then that the daffodils aren't now necessarily the primary thing, or what they are is that part of the narrative of a bigger thing. So you're now looking at this sort of suburban scene with daffodils in the garden. Or maybe further around on the walk, we've got this little bit of wall between the road and the field. And so there's a whole bunch of daffodils here which haven't been planted in a neat little row. They've just kind of sprung up somewhere. And you've got this little bunch sitting there. We've got an old stone wall. We've got a bit of a tree. We've got fields in the distance. Or maybe we will now want to take this bunch and we want to get down in amongst them. We want to get close into these daffodils. And now we've got the yellow all over the place, and they're drooping down and they're sitting up, and we've got hints of dead tree behind it and branches. Or maybe we want to take a smaller bunch, and we want to just take, rather than a big sprawling bunch. And now what we do is we just get this little touch here, these 4 daffodils. But we're getting that sense, we're ignoring the wall here, we're getting the sense of the road that's running behind it. So now what we're on is we're on this sort of street. And this particular street in Castle Douglas, you've got a field on one side and you've got houses on the other. And it's the street that's sort of leaving town. It's edge of town kind of photography. And so maybe what we're wanting to do here is get that sense of this little pocket of daffodils on the edge of town. Or maybe we don't want to actually have that street. Maybe we want to have the stone wall behind it, just the stone wall. So that kind of isolates it. So we've got a stone wall here, but that stone wall could be kind of anywhere. And it's taken away that sense of the road that was next to it. Or what we might want to do is go close up to one of these daffodils where we've got the trumpet and we've got this one completely in focus, but we've got that hint of the road and the houses and what have you out of focus behind it. Are you starting to see that each of these photos has got a different narrative, a different feel, a different sense of what we're trying to communicate? Or what we might want to do is really just get into that bunch where, unlike this bunch where they're all sitting separately, here you're like right in amongst them. And you've got this sort of full kind of overlapping mass of yellow. And in fact, you could probably go in even closer and kind of practically fill the frame with the yellow. Or do we want to kind of come down under that bunch of yellow, and then we have the blue sky behind it, and the blue sky with the branches coming down, and we've kind of got this whole sort of sense of, we've got the yellow against the blue, we've got these wonderful kind of branches without the leaves yet. Or do we want to isolate a single dandelion? Some of you may recognise this was the one that I've got on the cover card for this particular episode. This one leapt out at me. I thought, okay, if I need a cover card, this one will do. So now what we're doing is we're isolating this splash of yellow, this very distinct yellow shape against the blue sky. And of course, yellow and blue have these kind of, this really nice kind of colour combination. But again, all the slightly out of focus branches and twigs coming down. What did Marcy say? 1 vote for the stone wall, 1 vote for the close-up after. Or do we want to get our sense of daffodils in the foreground all disappearing in a line? So we've got this perspective all going out of focus where you've got the long wall running down with the trees, a little hint of road there as well. But now we're angling, we're using that sense of perspective and that sense of focus, depth of field to sort of give that sense of we're here, but there's more extending out, just disappearing off, creating it very atmospheric. Or a little bit further along, here's a whole bunch of daffodils which are through a fence, an old rusty metal fence, to the big house sitting the other side of it, and they're almost kind of framed in the gaps in the fence. And I'm then using the fence again in that kind of perspective diagonal way. And we've got the sun coming down, shooting a beam, and again creating a particular kind of spring-like mood. Or do we want to sort of actually isolate one of those daffodils between the pillars, the little spikes, the little metal spikes of... Now, again, like I say, these are unedited. If I was going to edit this, obviously I would probably come a little bit closer, maybe do something like that, just to kind of make it sort of slightly more interesting. But the point is I'm there, I'm out for my walk, I'm with the phone. Here's the thing. I've just moved left and right with the idea of framing the daffodil, with the idea that I can come back and I can properly edit it afterwards. But what's the story you're trying to communicate? Or do I bend down and I find this little lovely bit of shape in the fence and I decide to use that completely as the frame within a frame idea and actually completely frame this head of the daffodil by this little bit of rusty, this particular shape in the metalwork of the fence? Or do I want to find 2 different kinds of daffodils, the ones which have got whiter petals around the outside of the yellow trumpet, and to have the traditional more yellow ones sitting in the background, so that you're getting both kinds come into the shot, thereby communicating the idea of kind of variety within daffodils. Or do we want to take that same idea, have the two bunches, but now I've gone wide angle, and we're back to this sense of the perspective of the, the wall running down the set, the little bit of road running over here. What is it? Oh, Anton says yellow and blue is the colour of our flag. Of course, Sweden, so it's got to be good. And, oh well, single daffodil in the tri-ring thing-shaped hole is quite something. Right, okay. Or, another one. Do we want to go, here's the roundabout. So this is, you know, and what we've got, it's got a bunch of daffodils in the, so are we going for something urban, civic, you know? So there's, you've got the roundabout, the cars would be coming round, but we've got all these, this centre part here, we've got bunches of daffodils coming up. Or do we want to cross over to that roundabout, get that sense of these bunches that have come up, but also maybe what we're getting in is the fact that we've got the light behind it and we've got these lovely shadows coming down here as well. But we've still very much got this urban sense. We've got a building over here. We've got this memorial statue here. But we are now on the roundabout at the top of town. Or do we want to go and step the other side of this wonderful pink heather, that's purpley pink heather that's coming out? And now what we've got is we've got that lovely colour combination of this fantastic kind of purpley pink and the bright yellow of the daffodils. We've also got, we're including within this, the more bits of road and other bits of, so basically that first one of the roundabout, I was standing just here, looking back the way. Then I've crossed over and I was standing over on the right. Now I've moved round to the memorial and looking back from the heather. Again, each one of these has a very different feel to it. Or do we want to go to, there's another embankment where you've got like an embankment atop of Market Hill, and we've got these daffodils out. And if you get right down low, you can go for the full sky again. But rather than that isolated daffodil with trees hanging down over branches hanging over, now we've got this clear blue sky and a bunch of daffodils going on. Or do we want to, we find a broken daffodil. One of these has been snapped off. Either somebody's picked it and let it go, or maybe a dog knocked it over or whatever. But then now what story are you telling is the notion of, you know, this single daffodil that isn't planted. It's been picked and it's just been left lying. Or do we see a similar daffodil or the same daffodil, but on a piece of tarmac, on a path? And that has a different feel again to something that's just sitting on the grass. Or on the path, do we want to get right down at path level, ground level shot? And now we see this, just the head of the daffodil there with the path disappearing into the distance, buildings in the background, and just that sense of this almost like a kind of nature overpowered by man-made urban. Or do we want to try and get a little bit fancy with our use of diagonals and have this diagonal line running up from the corner here to try and create something over there? Or do we want to take that isolated daffodil but place it, rather than just shooting from above, have it on that sense of path? So you get that sense of the path is disappearing off into the future or off to somewhere, and then there's this lone daffodil sitting there. Or do we want to find some kind of crumpled up, now starting to shrivel daffodil, which isn't really, you know, which is past its best? The point is, I've just shown you 35 different photos of daffodils. Every single one of them has a slightly different narrative, has a slightly different sense of what you're trying to communicate. Every single one of them you could take and you could edit up, and within the editing, you could enhance that narrative. With the blue sky, you could make it bluer. You could, some of these you could crop in a bit more. Some of these you could maybe bring out a little bit more detail, sharpness in the petals, or maybe you could even blur the background a little bit more, or you could do color contrast a touch more. There's all these things you could do. Every single one of these, which of those you might choose, or which several ones of those you might choose, to make something of would depend on the story you wanted to tell, would depend on your aesthetic, depends on what appeals to your particular eye and what you wish to communicate to somebody else. And for me, this is what photography is. This is the beauty of photography. This is the love of photography. And it's also why I like mixing with other photographers who see the world so that, you know, if I handed all these 35 to you and said, okay, everybody pick one and edit it the way you want it to. I'll set a challenge for the most best edited daffodil photo, right? You would all choose a different one. And even those of you who chose the same picture to edit up would edit it in a slightly different way. Or at least you should do, because it's about your eye, your vision, your stories you want to tell. Okay. This is what's crucial. It's not a technical exercise. It's not just about, oh, there's a daffodil. I've taken a photo of it. It's in focus. It's properly exposed. I've cropped it okay. That'll do. I'll put it in for this competition. Oh, somebody else has taken a photo of a daffodil and theirs is in focus and theirs is cropped properly and theirs is decently exposed. But theirs looks better than mine. Oh, they must have a better camera then. No, they've just communicated their story better. So understanding that photography is a storytelling medium is absolutely crucial to understanding really what photography is all about. So, okay, there's me. Vast amounts of energy poured into that. It's just, like I say, I've been practically having a existential crisis over this when I've realised it's so rare for people to understand. I don't know why people don't understand it. You don't hand somebody a paintbrush and then go, okay, all this paintbrush is good for is like painting a single line, and I'm going to judge you on that single line, that single straight line, by how straight the line is and how thick the paint is. Paintbrush is going to allow you infinite variety of creativity. A pencil, you can get infinite creativity. A typewriter, you can get infinite variety of creativity. And so you can with a camera too. So this for me is what the essence of photography is all about. Right, and breathe. Okay, so a couple of comments. What have we got here? Okay, so Anton says, OMG, the daffodils never stop giving. You're really working out on those flowers. Yes, that's kind of the point. Marcy says, oh, your flag, let's keep politics out of this. Oh, yellow and blue. Okay, so there's different kinds of things going on. So yes, because Anton is in Sweden. Yellow, blue, Swedish. There's also a lot of the geopolitics with the yellow and blue, I suppose, to do with Ukraine. But as you say, this is not a political podcast. This is a photographic podcast. What have we got? Yep. Okay. So Marcy says, oh, wow, love the ground level shot. I'm stealing that. Absolutely. Steal it. Any of these ideas, take them, make them your own. What else? Marcy says, my one rule is that if I have a camera in my hand, I'm out for a fun day. That's why I don't do weddings. Oh, Anton says that was a good presentation and point. Excellent. Thank you. Marilyn says, well said, Kim. Thank you for putting that into words. And Marcy and Lisa also say, thank you for the great presentation and got so much from that. Excellent. Phew. I'm glad. I hope I just haven't frightened too many people away with just the sheer intensity of it. Okay. Right, so with all that in mind, where are we going to go here? Let's just have a quick breather and a little reminder here that if you find these podcasts useful, interesting, entertaining even, intense to your degree of preferred intensity, then you can support them with buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres. Now, what we can also do is you can send me images. I remember I have here the email address kimayrespodcast@gmail.com. So if you are wanting to send in images for feedback, if you're wanting to send in images for the challenges, then this is the place to do it. Next week's challenge, the headshot challenge, I'll remind you all about that at the end of the podcast. And we have coming up now the feedback session. But just before we get to that, a quick little update on the Smug points. So Smug points for March so far. Anton is currently out front with 40 Smug points, and Gunilla and Marilyn are running a close second with 35 Smug points. So you get your Smug points by the amount you contribute to these podcasts. So if you are watching live, leave a comment. The actual act of leaving a comment automatically gives you 5 Smug points. If you enter a challenge, you get 10 Smug points. There are then bonus Smug points to be gained from positioning, votes and stuff for what you put into the challenge. Then there's a notion of these sessions, like today, a feedback session. If you stick pictures in for feedback, you get 25 Smug points, and you get more Smug points for doing this than the other things, because it really is something which contributes to the podcast. Because when you put in your image, not only do you get all of the knowledge that comes from getting the feedback on your particular image, but so do those watching as well, because you can often watch somebody else's image being taken apart, reassembled, looked at in a different way, and suddenly start applying it to your own work as well. So feedback really is one of the most precious things about this podcast. And if more people sent me in images for feedback, I could very easily just turn this entire podcast over purely to feedback. However, we still enjoy the few challenges here and there. So what we're going to do now then is we're going to move on to the feedback session on this. So I'm going to start with Gunilla, and Gunilla sent in. Now, what she says is, so she sent me a picture with several different crops here. So if let's first of all show you her original unedited file. No, not that one, sorry, is this one. So what we have is a kind of windsurfer as such, so he's got his not on one of these sort of boards with the big sail on it, but one where he's actually kind of holding the sail above his head. This is the unedited photo. Then she sent me a couple of variations on the crop. So she's got a close-in crop, which she's done in black and white. She's got a colour version of that close-in crop. She's got a wider, slightly squarer crop where you're getting a little bit more of what's going on. And then she did a portrait crop as well. But what Gunilla says with this is, hi Kim, I photographed this last summer, but as you can see, I've done several post processes, mostly crops. It was a large distance to the surfer, and I suppose if we go back to the original image here, we get that sense of so zoomed in as far as you can. That's as big as she's, so the surfer himself is still fairly small within the size of it. She says many of the photos were blurry, but this was one of the best. I decided to enter a club competition with the black and white version, which was that one, but it did not go so well. Is there an alternate crop that could work better, or maybe do better post processes, or maybe the composition could have been better? Okay, so what we have then is we have this picture. Gunilla's taken it. There's a level of excitement. You can imagine you're down by the beach, maybe, or out on a platform. I don't know. Maybe you're in a boat. I'm not sure where you were taking it from. But there's a guy out there, and he's got this thing above his head, and he's shooting along, and it's quite exciting. So you bring out your camera, click, 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 fire off as many shots as you can before it's all disappeared. Some of those aren't in focus. Your autofocus isn't going on the right place, or by the time you've focused it and you've gone click, he's moved again, or the waves are moving up and down. So not everything, but you get some of them in focus, and it's one of those things where you're seeing something good, you're seeing something interesting, but there's a limit to what you can do. You can't turn around and say, oh, could you hold it just there? That's a really nice pose. Or actually, could you just bend your knees a little bit to give me a slightly better lines? There's no potential interaction with your subject. So what you're having to do is essentially shoot off as best as you can, in the hope that when you get back to your computer and you've downloaded your images and you can get a proper look at them, that you can go, okay, this one kind of worked. Now what can I do to edit it to make it better? So what have we got? Oh, Anton said maybe a wider crop will work, or just crop from the bottom and the top. And he likes the black and white one too. Lisa also likes the black and white one. Fiji says, well, what a capture. I quite like the colour version as I'm partial to blue. Oh, Gunilla says she was actually on the beach at the point she's taking the photo. So using the zoom, getting in close. Now, okay, so what can we do with this? Let me just open up Photoshop here. So let's flip back to here. Open that with Photoshop, and we'll just sort of get a sense of, first of all, what we could, let's just kind of fill it. So not that. So the very first thing we would do, obviously, just straighten that horizon, which Gunilla has done. So we'll just do that as our starting point. Now we do that, and that's straight. That's not quite straight. Go again. I know what's confusing me, yes. So we want to make sure that that bit's straight, because the coast is curving in a little bit. So if I make that straight, then it tilts the rest of sea. Okay, so we've got that straight. But what's happened here? So what are we up against? Now, in essence, what we have is we've got our surfer, we've got the sea, we've got the backdrop. And then it comes down to kind of what are we trying to convey, and what are the best editing tools we can do to try and get that narrative across, given the limitations that we have. Now, sometimes the limitations will be too much to be able to impress camera club judges. Sometimes we just have to go, it was the one that got away. Sometimes we can rescue things, and maybe it will work in some areas and not in others. Marcy says the difference between the deep blue water and the green in the shallows is what got my attention. Okay, so again, different ways you can go about the editing. The black and white, Anton is partial to black and white. He liked that. Somebody else mentioned the black and white, I think. VG mentioned she likes the blues. Marcy said she actually quite likes that kind of contrast between the greens and the blues. So those are also other ways you could start thinking about it. Now, crop-wise, now one of the crops you did do, actually, let's just flick back to here. I will just say this crop here is probably my least favourite of them. And part of the reason for that is there's a strong notion that unless there's a compelling reason otherwise, if you have a subject that is moving, whether it's somebody walking, somebody on a bicycle, somebody riding a horse, somebody, or in this case, somebody surfing, then ideally you would generally want to have more space in front of them than you want to have behind them. Now, you did that with this one. We've got more space in front, and that sits more comfortably. There's a sense of the surfer moving into the space, and you've given them space. Because when we see a subject that's facing a particular way, by and large, we tend to ignore what's behind it. What's behind it seems less relevant. So there's just a little bit of space here on the right, just enough to say, yes, there's more sea. I don't have to think about it, and it's about the space that he's moving into. Whereas when we're here, we still want to kind of cut off the back, but there's all this space here. So it kind of makes it slightly irrelevant. The balance doesn't quite feel right. So as a starting point, if you are going to do a vertical portrait crop, then similar to your landscape crop, I would still have, now whether you wanted to go have minimal amount of sky like that, or whether you wanted to having sort of, but I would still have the notion of slightly to the right of the picture so that he's moving into it rather than to the left. Okay, so that's just one of those bits to do with the portrait crop. Now, Anton also mentioned the idea of removing some of the sky and removing some of the sea above and below. And at this point, what we can do is we can go quite cinematic even. And at that point, having him in the middle isn't quite such a bad thing. The cinematic crop, very often when we're looking at cinema, the action is happening in the middle of the screen. Not always, but sometimes it is. And in a way, you can get away with that notion of him being in the middle and this space to the right in a cinematic crop that maybe you wouldn't get away with in an ordinary kind of landscape crop. But one of the main problems that we have here is the fact that there's not a lot of detail to it. We can't see. If I start zooming in here, now actually this, I would say, is where it gets exciting. This is the action shot. This is where we've got the guy on the ball, we've got the surf coming up, we've got the hands coming up, we've got that determined look in the face, and a crop something like this, actually just enough headland there to give us this sense of, right, okay, he's out in the bay, I think is really what you're after. the problem with this is that the resolution isn't high enough. At this point, you're already zoomed into the max, and we have now zoomed out so that we've lost 95% of the pixels. We're only working with about 5 to 10% of the actual available pixels on something like this. Now, what we do want to do, whether we're there or we're deciding that we're here, I suppose, yeah, to come into this notion of the balance. Is it about the surfer? Is it about the surfer in the space? Is it about the space with the surfer in it? And that's a really important kind of sense of what we're doing here. Understand, again, to come back to this, what narrative are you trying to tell? Is it about the surfer? Is it about the relationship between the surfer and the water and the background behind him? Or is it really about the landscape, which happens to have a surfer in it, in order to emphasize the whatever it is about the landscape that you want? Now, in this case, it really is about the surfer. The problem is that your camera didn't have a strong enough zoom to be able to get in close enough to really make that narrative work. And so the tricky bit here is, do we try and turn it the other way so that we try and make it more about the landscape? And in that sense, that's where the cinematic crop maybe helps slightly more. It kind of creates a little bit of drama. Or is it about, trying to, if we try to get that balance, and I think we come back to your ones here, that's a good kind of balance. That really is, I would say, your best kind of crop for that sense of getting a sense of the surf. But we are back to this problem of the fact that he's not really light enough, or he's not detailed enough. So if we just take this crop in to something like what you had, it could be something like this, not absolute, but close enough, just close enough for me to work on. So we've got this. Now, what we could do with this is, if I go to select subject, then if I'm lucky, yep, here we go, nicely selected there. That allows me to independently then, so if I want to get the curves, it's going to mask it, and I can lighten up. Now, obviously, if I lighten up too much, it just looks false and stuck on. So that's no good. So you then have to kind of play around with a little bit, maybe lighten up to a degree. And maybe when we've done that, we have to go in, we've got to watch out here because the splash isn't quite right. So doing a little bit of masking with, so if I've got that on black, that's going to remove. If I have it on white, it's going to add in what we've curved. So what I might want to do is I'm going to put it on something like 50% here. I'm going to have it on the black, and I'm just going to kind of take the edge off that overly bright part there. So now what's happening is, at the very least, he's standing out a little bit more. Now, looks like I've maybe overcooked it slightly here, so I'll maybe just take the edge off. But you can just very softly kind of just get the edges back down, just in case if it's starting to look like it is kind of just stuck on a little bit too much. Just use your brush slightly to do it. So we've got this, and I think this is starting to look better. But what we might also want to do, you could even do a little bit of dodge and burn. So if I take the dodge tool, maybe I want to lighten up. That's on 100%, don't want that. Let's put that again on something like about 30%, and just very lightly lighten up a couple of these highlights on his chest. Maybe you could even go a little bit on there, something like that. And now overdone it on the corner there. So I tell you what, I'll just mask out for the one underneath. Where are we? Yep, just take that bit out there. So now what's happening is the face is standing out a little bit more. You're getting more of a sense now of the surfer in the space. So that's kind of helping you kind of get a sense. So John's saying, do you use the histogram a lot? Yes, periodically. What I would then do is, so we can see here that that's playing around with it. But basically, I'm judging it by eye while I'm doing the curves. Am I going bright or dark, or just kind of, I'm working out something there. What I will do at the end, quite very often, is I'll go to the levels, and here we see the histogram. Now this is covering the whole thing. Now I can brighten up the whole lot, and but I've got to play this by ear, because sometimes you're going to lose something. And if I go too bright, obviously we've got it. Now, generally speaking, you will bring it up to something like this. I've got to be slightly careful. Have we lost some of the atmosphere? Maybe take it back a touch, something like that. But maybe that's not so bad. But maybe what I will also do is just, well, that's not 50%. It's blown the highlights now where we lightened up on this. So I'll take that out. Also, maybe, okay, let's drop that down. Something like 26 here. Just that little bit there, and one or two of the highlights up there, or something like that. So now we're getting that sense of the drama, okay? And I think, you probably don't need quite as much. So yeah, that was kind of your crop. Now, at this point, if you want, you can then go ahead and we can black and white it. And we can play around with our little sliders here, see if that makes any difference. That's the greens. Well, that brings up the, you can play around a little bit more with any of these if you want. Is it more dramatic in black and white, or do we want to try and boost the colours or play with the colours or something like that? I quite like the colour sense of this. I don't know that there's enough tonal grades to really know that definitely a black and white is going to make it massively better. But you could, if we take all these, and I'll tell you what, I find I prefer playing with black and white in Camera Raw. It tends to give me a few more options. But put it in black and white here. What I can also do, maybe give it a little bit of vignette just at the corners there, just slight edges there, just to draw your attention a little bit more. What we might want to do is play with the contrast, no, less of the contrast. I think I'll maybe go for the clarity. There we go. The clarity kind of moves up the drama of it, almost makes it feel slightly more in focus and sharper as well. Texture, got to be careful about overdoing the texture. Maybe you just want to sort of slightly do a localized version of the texture. But now it's in black and white, we probably can lighten it up a little bit more, bring the shadows up a touch, something like that, maybe a little bit of contrast. And now we're kind of getting something a little bit more kind of dramatic or something like that. So for a black and white photo, we've now got that. Okay. So yes, there's the black and white. To go back to the question though of the original bit. So I mean, I think when we, okay. Sorry, too many thoughts in at the same time. So whether it's this version or it's the colour version, I think if we're talking about what's the best we can get out of the picture we had, we're kind of at this, which isn't a million miles away from what you already had. I'm just tweaking it in a slightly different way, but you're kind of there. You already knew this to an extent. But the other part of your question is that you put it in for the camera club and just didn't get the kind of reaction you wanted. And part of the problem really is that now if you'd managed to fill your camera with this, if you'd had a big zoom, and actually managed to fill this, then that could have been more dramatic. Also, what could have been quite dramatic is if you'd been slightly lower down so that he and the kite, or at the very least the sail, actually broke the horizon. Not just a little tip here, but actually went complete. Imagine his hands and this were actually above the horizon. Okay, that would give you a much more dramatic sense of the way, almost like because the sail, what are you going to call it? I'll call it the sail anyway. That would be actually literally in the sky, would give you that sense of the wind grabbing it. And then if his body, is in the water and his hands are in the sky, that's going to add to the sense of drama. So if you're talking about getting a good version of this kind of photo, you need to start from a different place. You need a bigger zoom. You need to be at a different angle. And maybe, depending on what other angles he's got around him, sometimes his body's going to be shifting shape. So there comes a point whereby you're going, well, okay, this is the best that I've got. And for this photo, this is as far as I can take it. And that's fine. And maybe if this is on something like Guru Shots, Photo Crowd, one of these online sites, online competition sites, where people are only ever looking at it on their phone or a tablet. And there's a competition which is called People in Action, Drama, Capturing the Moment, water sports, whatever it is, then this one might not do too badly. But if you're at a camera club setting whereby maybe you were going to try and print this, well, then you know that there's just not enough pixels in it to really be able to bring it out. And there's not been enough there to really be able to, even though we've done what we can, you know, his face is, we've not got the expression on his face that we really want to capture. It's pixelated. It's, you know, so to get the photo that's going to be more of a competition winner and really rank up there in the kind of top few percent, you needed to have had, this is like a thumbnail sketch of it. This is the kind of thing which makes you go, okay, if I get the chance to do this again, I'll go down with a bigger lens. I'll go down, and if I'm at the beach, if you were saying you're on the beach there, squat down, get down to near sea level, you know, and then take a shot so that he is actually really half above the horizon. Adjust your height so that where that horizon appears behind him is going to make quite a bit of difference. So I hope that makes sense, Gunilla. Thanks very much for sending it in. So it's interesting to kind of play around with an idea like this, that sometimes you've got the photo and the editing can get it to where you want it to. And sometimes no amount of editing is ever really going to create the photo because the core image in the first place just wasn't there, because it was beyond what the camera was actually capable of. And you needed to have been closer. You needed to have had a bigger lens or something like that to really get the kind of image that you have in your head of what you wanted for that. But I hope that makes sense. I hope that kind of gives you some insights into that image. But thanks very much for sending it in. So what have we got? Marcy says, or it's talking to John about the use of histograms. So they're chatting a little bit about that. Yeah, Marcy says the black and white removes that deep and shallow contrast. John likes the black and white version. Gunilla says thank you. Marcy says this is beautiful art. What appeals to us is different and none of us are wrong. This is true. Right. Okay. No, I mean, if one quick thing on that, Marcy, which is, I think, an interesting little kind of slight tangent, but very relevant, which is if we're creating for ourselves, then what's really important is that we create it to a point whereby we can go, ah, yes, I've nailed what I wanted out of it. And that then, you're right, what anybody else then thinks of that art, whether it's a painting, whether it's a photo, whether it's a willow sculpture, is irrelevant, because what you're doing first and foremost is satisfying your own aesthetic. Where it makes a difference is if you're trying to appeal to other people. And if you're, as a professional photographer, you can have your own aesthetic, but there's also what your client wants. And then quite often, if you're shooting on commercially, it's not just your client, it's what your client's client wants. You're creating imagery that your client is going to use to attract their clients. So at that point, there's things that certainly you are using your aesthetic and your judgment and what have you, but you also have to take into consideration how other people are going to be viewing it and what reaction those other people are likely to have. In which case you might have to end up making certain editorial or, you know, aesthetic decisions, which might not align completely with your own. Obviously you try and get them close enough, otherwise photography just stops being satisfying. But always understand that somebody else is going to be looking at this image. Now, if it's only you who's going to be looking at that image, that's not a problem. But if you're putting in an image for your camera club, or or onto Guru Shots or Photo Crowd, or even Facebook, because you're trying to get a few more likes just from your pals, other people are going to be looking at this, and then they are going to be judging it in a particular way. So, but you still have to, obviously, you bring your own aesthetic to it. Anyway, a little bit of a side there. Right, okay, where are we? So Marcy says, wow, I needed that, thank you. Okay. Right, okay, what we're going to do now then is I'm going to move on to Anton, and then I'll remind you about the headshot challenge for next week. And I know half of you are going to turn, oh, I'll just pretend I haven't heard that and disappear, but I really, really want you to try and engage if you can. So next up then, we are going to go to Anton. Now, Anton sent in this image here. And Anton says, I'm drawn to the way the street light illuminates the graffiti on the fence, as well as the branches coming down from above. I also liked how the building in the background is painted more or less the same colour as the fence, diagonally cut by the hill, and then there's the two windows over on the right hand side, looking like that, peeking through the shadows as if it's watching. I'm working here with a contrasty night scene. I've tried editing it to make the darkness more or less pure black. I guess what I'm mostly unsure about is if I'm going too heavy on the contrast and making the photo feel more unnatural than it is unedited. I also always appreciate criticism on the composition. What was that? Marcy says, I will try to tone down my vision of art and acquiesce to the client. Ooh, well... Or what you try and do is you try and find clients who appreciate your particular aesthetic. The problem is, if you are a creative, then there is always that, there's that balance. Many of my clients come to me because they like my aesthetic and they want what it is that I can produce that other photographers aren't doing. So whereas people who prefer somebody else's aesthetic will go to another photographer. But sometimes people are coming to me because they can see that I'm good enough to do what they want, but they need a particular thing whereby I have to be thinking about, like I say, maybe not just even my client, but my client's client and what they're likely to want. It's about who's going to be looking at it, what impression does the person looking at it need to take away with them, what do you need to do as the professional photographer in the room, what do you need to do in order to make that happen? People are coming to you not just for your ability to hold the camera, they're sometimes coming to you for your expertise and insights as well. So worth keeping that one in mind, I think. Okay, back to Anton's picture here. So what we have now, interestingly, Anton also sent me it was a black and white version of this. Anton very often shoots in black and white, although he shoots in RAW as well, so that he can go back and edit with the colour. Now, I think that what's interesting with this photo, so what we're talking about is what Anton is drawn to is we have the street lamp, we have the graffiti on the fence lit up by the street lamp, but there's also these little bits of branches just sort of slightly coming into light here. There's a house in the background being lit up with the diagonal cut through it, and then there's these little pictures, windows sitting over here. So this is what's drawing Anton to it, and we've got all these little interesting elements. I think the problem here that we're up against, though, is that each of the elements is sort of positioned in a different place, whereby they are competing with. Our eye doesn't know quite necessarily where to go. We can't necessarily include everything in the same place. So now Anton sent me the RAW file. So what I will do is I will open that up and we'll just show you what we've got here. So that's just, I'll straightforwardly open it. I'm not going to worry too much about ISO and things like this. So to give you a sense of what I mean, I'm just going to grab a little pencil tool here. And when we look at a photo like this, there are these different elements. And the very first thing that is grabbing all our attention is this bit up here, okay? Because it's the brightest thing in the picture. The eye is getting drawn up there. What you're also interested in, though, part of what you like about this is the graffiti, okay? So the graffiti is here, and that's interesting. But as our eye goes to the graffiti, it gets yanked away by the light, which is right up at the top of the picture. Other interesting aspects of this are we've got the pair of windows over here, which are kind of fun, but they're quite a way removed. There's this bit of the house over here, but then we've also got branches up here, which we quite like, and then you said there was branches over here. Now, what there also is this bit of tree here, which you ended up cropping out most of that in your version of it here. Yeah, we don't have the edge of the tree. We've just got the little branches dropping down. But what we can see here is that we have all these different elements, and they're all kind of interesting elements, but they're not flowing. Then they kind of feel like they're in competition with each other. On top of that, what we also have is we've got the snowy path down below, and because that's quite bright as well down here, that because it's reflecting, it's directly under the light, that as a really bright patch is grabbing our attention too. Now, and in here, so we go back to your edited version, there's this bright patch down here, which again, if we're talking about what we're really wanting to draw attention to is partly the graffiti, then the brightness of this snowy path is detracting our attention away from it. So what can we do with this? How can we go about playing with this? Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to chop up your picture and reassemble it. And now, it's fully understandable here. For many people, there's a sense of, with the editing, fine, you adjust and lighten and darken and bits and pieces, and maybe you're allowed to remove little objects which are detracting. But the idea of actually physically moving things is a step too far. You've then taken away from what photography is, and now it's all about editing. For other people, your photo is a starting point, and what you're doing is you're telling a story. You're not too worried about facts as such. Never let the facts get in the way of a good story. What you're interested in doing is communicating an idea. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come at it with the notion of what's the idea you're communicating and how can we enhance that idea. So with that in mind, let me show you what I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to duplicate this layer first of all. Crop wise, I'm just going to bring that down a little bit there. Now, first thing I'm thinking about here is this snow and this bright patch here. So I will just straightforwardly, I'm just going to grab a curves level. I'm going to move this down a little bit. I'm just looking at the snow at the moment, just kind of darkening that down a touch, something like that. Now, I'm then going to fill that with black so that this curves layer is now essentially transparent. I'm going to go to my brush, go back to 100% here, and then I'm going to paint white on it, which will bring the adjustment layer back into it. So we can see here that what that does is just soften that down. Okay, so now the path isn't grabbing our attention to the same degree. The light still is, everything else still is, but that's okay. That's layer one as such. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'll tell you what, I'm going to select all of that, just paste it onto a new layer, just so that we can take it step by step. The next thing I want to do is the problem is your light up here, which is kind of a crucial part because it's grabbing these branches here, is way up from the picture. So if we go back to this bit from the graffiti, I mean, so the gap here between, sorry, it wasn't what go away, wasn't what I meant to do. Let's just go back to the pencil tool for the moment. The gap between the graffiti and the light is big. So our attention is getting drawn up here, but we're really wanting to get the attention down there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this upper half here, going to copy, paste, and then I'm going to drag it down. Now I will just put that on an opacity of 50% so we can see where it is in relation to the other bit. But what I'm trying to do here is I'm wanting to bring, and especially these branches here, much closer down to level with the top of this fence, because it's this fence which is the interesting bit. Okay, so I now need to just line that up, something like that. Okay, maybe just, okay, well, let's go a fraction higher so it doesn't look too unnatural. So now what I'm going to do, now I've done that, I'll crop this down to match the top there. I'll take this bit back up to 100%. No, I'll take it down to 0. No, sorry, have it 100%. I will mask it, sorry, invert mask it. And now what I will do is I will paint it back in. Oh, what have I done here? I scribbled that bit on the wrong bit. Okay, sorry, that was really bad of me with the pencils. I thought I was on a different layer. Let's just go back to here. Let's deselect that. Let me do this again. So I'm basically cropping what's above the fence, pasting it, and then dragging it down. Quick opacity thing, just where do I want it? And what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at your branches, and I want to have these branches just above, comfortably above the fence, but not so far above, because I think it's an interesting point. So now we're going to line that back up there. Now I can do the invert mask to get rid of it. Actually, before I do that, let's just crop this down to there. Now we can do the invert mask. And now what I can do is I can, is that 100%? Yes. Okay, why is that not? Oh, that's because it's still on 50%, right. Oh, go back to here, right. So, okay, I had that on 50%. Let me just do this again to show you what I'm doing. So that's the original. Now I'm taking the masked out bit and I'm just painting your light back into here, okay. Might need to just run it over a little bit, but essentially now what we're doing, what I want you to see here is the fact that having this light in has now meant that the gap between the light and the graffiti is now much closer. It's also brought this notion of the house into it, and we've now got this circle here where things are going on. These branches though are too high up, and I quite like these branches. So what we might want to do also is allow those branches to come down a bit as well from the original too, and that some of those things just kind of come back into play over there. Now again, back and forth with the white and the black, just so that we're not. So now we're getting this kind of thing going on. Now at this point, we're now kind of start thinking about the crop. Now what I want to do, this is so in the middle, and the graffiti doesn't really start until it's over here. That what I want to do is I want to crop it so that this would look more like that. I think that's a better crop, except for the fact we miss out on the tree. So what I want to do here is, we'll copy all this, paste it onto a fresh layer. And now I'm going to do the same thing I did before, but I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy, paste, and then just reduce the opacity so we can see where it goes. I'm going to bring those branches closer over to the light here. Now we can come in and we can crop that bit there. In fact, actually, well, let's just undo that for a moment, and we'll move that just over a fraction more, so that when I do the crop, we've now got our light more or less on that place of thirds. Now I can go back to here, I can create the inverse mask, and then I can just paint, sorry, put that in, those bits of tree back in, and bring that little bit of branch back over here, and we can bring that tree down to the edge of, and now that I think is really bringing it in much closer. Now all I've got to do is take this, pull that in back a little bit here, something like that, and maybe what I will do actually is just shift this bit over a fraction more, and then pull that in a little bit. How far can I take that? Something like that. And here what we're now, I think, is we're kind of where we want to be. Okay, so we've now got these elements that we had before, but they are much more contained. So now we've got our graffiti, we've got our light on the branches, we've managed to bring in that edge of the tree, we've got these branches over here, we've got this diagonal on the house at the back there. We've even got our two little lights in the darkness over on the right, but it feels contained. It feels like it's there together. So rather than these narrative points being dotted about all over the screen, we've managed to kind of bring them all into the one. Now, at this point, we can put them onto a fresh layer, and then we can go to camera raw, and then at this point, if you want, we can do, well, no, auto is going to look awful. But we can then start playing around, maybe, you know, bring in a little bit of vignette. Maybe we can play with the clarity tool a little bit. Maybe we actually want to even create a little bit more contrast, or we want to, where are we? The curves. We maybe want to cancel that. Well, the point is that you could go in and you could play and play, or for that matter, actually, if you wanted to go back to your black and white, let's just do that for a moment, because I think this would work. I can go black and white, and then we go to the black and white mixer. Here's where it gets interesting. See, I can move the, I can make the red of the thing darker or lighter. I'm not so bothered about that. The orange really makes a difference. The yellow changes again. Now, interestingly, if I do the yellow, I kind of get more, boost the yellow a bit up here. I get more out of that. But I can take the orange down a little bit, play with the reds a little bit. So you could, if you want, you can play around and kind of enhance the graffiti side of it as well. But what we've got to be careful about, though, is blowing out the highlights too much with the light. So maybe we bring that down a fraction, something like that. Maybe we go for a touch more clarity. Maybe we can even darken the whole thing a little bit more, because the clarity is creating that kind of textured contrast, something like that. So it's an idea, a way to play with if you want to play around with the black and white. If it's the colour that you're most interested in, you can do the same thing with the colour as well. The point is with this, is what we're trying to do, the key thing with all of this, Anton, is to go, well, what's the story? What are the elements? And when we go back to your original picture, what you're talking about is what you like. Or you like the fact that the light is catching the tree, the branches here and here. You like the fact that the house in the background has got that diagonal cut through it. You like the fact there's the graffiti on here. You like those two little lights sitting in the dark over on the right. And all these are interesting elements, but here they are too far apart that there isn't a cohesive narrative. So what is the narrative? The narrative is the combination of how all these things work together. So the question is then in the editing, what do we do to bring all those things together? And whether by playing around with the crop, we bring them together in colour. If you put things into black and white, that's another way of unifying. But at the same time, you're still going to have all the compositional elements together. If we just went black and white on your original picture, it's still not going to work any better. So this is what I mean about the editing. It's about understanding the narrative. What is it you're trying to convey, and how can the editing enhance what it is you're trying to say? And like I say, for some people, what I've done today is just go too far. You know, if you can't capture essentially the composition within the camera, then it's no longer proper photography. For other people, what it is photography is a storytelling thing, and what you are doing is you are taking the elements to create a story. Is this photography? Is this collage? Plenty of room for debate on both sides, and not one of those I'm going to get into particularly now. However, this is me sort of trying to help you understand how you can make the elements more cohesive. So I hope that helps. But thank you very much for sending that one in, Anton. I think it was an interesting piece, and you know, and it certainly helps to sort of draw out these elements of what the editing is for. Comments we have. Meg said that looks so easy, amazing. Anton says, chop it up. I have a problem with messy photos. Lisa says, that's so much better than cleaning my oven. It can wait. Anton says, oh, look, a little baby street light. Oh yeah, I see what you do, what you mean with the distance. Marcy says, this is exactly why I rely on in-camera photos. I really do not like Photoshop. Anton said, yeah, I wouldn't do this myself, but it's useful to see somebody else do it, and they agree. Lisa wants to watch the Photoshop work again for sure. Well, of course, this is the great thing about these podcasts, is they are all recorded here on YouTube, and you can come back and you can watch it again. You can watch it on double speed if you want to just speed up my voice, or you can put it on slow motion, or you can hit pause and watch it step by step. Marcy likes the black and white version of the shot, and Anton says, you've given me some ideas and another shot from further back that I might have been able to use for more coherent photo. Yep, that makes sense. Okay, so excellent. Thank you very much for sending that one in, Anton. So where are we at then? Oh God, right, okay, gone on a lot later than I intended to. So what we're doing then is let's as we kind of pull together the end of the podcast. Thank you, first of all, ever so much to Gunilla and Anton for sending in their images. So that, and again, I would encourage anybody to please make the most of these feedback sessions, both on your own photos, what you gain from it. And you can see both Gunilla and Anton have both said that they gained something out of it. And of course, everybody else who's watching who goes, oh, I could have a go at doing something like that. Or now I can see how that applies to something I would do. Or even if it helps you make you go, well, you know what? That's not the kind of thing I would do either. All these things help you to kind of formulate and work out where your limits are, or what you're capable of doing, or what you want to do, or what you don't want to do. So send in your images, and kimespodcast@gmail.com is the email I've set up to take your submissions. Now, also for the submissions, next week is the headshot challenge. So go back 2 weeks, go back to episode, is it 2 weeks, 1 week? I can't remember now. I've completely lost my sense. Anyway, go back to the headshots. Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago. That's right. Go back to the headshots episode where I go into great depth about what a headshot is and how to set about creating one. And what I want you to do is send me a headshot. Now, I will go slightly, it doesn't have to be like a professional LinkedIn headshot kind of thing, but it does need to be a headshot. It can be a portrait in the wider sense, but the key thing about it is it's about engagement with the camera. Okay, so it's not just a random shot of somebody happening to look over in this direction. It needs to be engaged with the camera. The key thing of a good headshot is that the eyes are looking at the camera. So the viewer, when they're looking at the photo, feels like the person in the photo is looking directly at them. So head and shoulders or head and upper body. Have a think about how much background you want to include or not. Or, is the background important? Is a hint of a background important? But primarily what we're talking about is head and shoulders or, head and upper body. Send your images to the podcast for next week. Ideally try and get them to me by Friday, because I have to kind of organize and put all these podcasts together, and if everything turns up on a Saturday night or Sunday morning, it's very difficult for me to kind of organize everything. There are smug points to be won as well. Now, with everything getting quite so close, then this could be crucial as to who gets to choose the topic for next month. So keep that one in mind. Meanwhile, if you happen to have found these podcasts interesting, useful, entertaining, buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is one of the ways you can support them. But of course, don't forget to hit like if you haven't done so already and you've enjoyed this podcast. Do hit the like. It does help the algorithms. Right, and that was something I mentioned to somebody else. Somebody else said to me they're having problems with the headshots. You're trying to find somebody who they could photograph. You are allowed to do a self-portrait if you want. This is another way of doing it. Set up the camera, look in yourself, play around with different expressions, play around with different lighting, play around with different kinds of moods that you would maybe have for a headshot. So you can do one of yourself as well if you're stuck for trying to find anybody else. Right, okay, so that's lots of people now saying thank you. Marcy says this is the best photocast. Thank you, excellent. Thank you. VG's looking forward to seeing what the submissions are going to look like, and basically everybody's saying have a great week and all the rest of it. So there we go. Thank you ever so much for everybody who's contributed. Thank you for you watching and who've been leaving comments and saying hi, and for anybody who's just kind of stuck their head around the corner and thought maybe this looks a bit interesting. And I look forward to seeing you all next week, and I look forward to seeing your submissions for the headshot challenge. Take care. Bye-bye.